This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Brueski, Stacy Cole, and Todd Michaels.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another week of Hidden Killers Live. I'm Tony Brueski, Todd Michaels, Stacy Cole, all with me. Today, we got some interesting stuff to talk about. We're going to go through Chad Daybell's prison letters. That's right. Chad Daybell has decided to continue his writing career, this time now in the form of letters. He has a website, which his daughter is posting his prison letters by his request. It's his way of getting his truth out there. And we're going to go through a lot of them from the start, and bonus, it's in Chad's own voice. Through the magic of AI technology, we have taken Chad's voice and allowed him to read the letters in his own cadence, everything. It'll be fun. We'll see. That's coming up in just a few. Plus, also Robin Dreeke going to join us next hour. We're going to talk about the latest on the Charlie Kirk situation, the murder of Charlie Kirk and the arrest of the suspect, and where all of that is at this current date and time. But to begin, let's start with something a little more lighthearted for a person who literally melted children in their backyard. Chad Daybell diving into something that is disturbing as it is surreal. These prison letters of Chad, 5 separate writings so far. And supposedly he's going to be putting out like 2 or 3 new ones a week. So this is just like, all right, feed me. Let me hear more of your writings, Chad.
Unpack, baby. Let's go.
Oh, my God. All from his cell on death row, mind you. He's awaiting execution for the murders of his wife, Tammy Daybell, and Lori Vallow's children, Tylee and JJ. In these letters, Chad is painting himself not as a manipulative figure at the center of the doomsday cult, rather as a misunderstood prophet. You know, it was just all a big misunderstanding. Maybe these will clear it up. A gentle husband, a family man, even a victim of media distortion. He's going to reminisce about his early marriage to Tammy, share childhood and missionary stories, and describe supposed near-death experiences, and even claims that songs like Whitney Houston's So Emotional carry divine meaning. Oh. If you need a little laugh, this is the one to watch. Behind every nostalgic antidote and spiritual claim is the chilling reality. The jury unanimously convicted him of orchestrating one of the most horrific family annihilation plots in recent memory. So we're going to break down the letters one by one, put them in their proper context, expose how Daybell uses faith, memory, and denial to try and rewrite the truth of who he really is and what he has done. So, let's get into it. We're going to start with letter 1 here, and we'll take a listen to it. It's about 8 minutes in length. We'll go through it. Maybe we'll pause here and there. This one, I'm going to say right off the bat, it's not as juicy as some of the other ones get. But we got to start somewhere. We got to get the opening context here, the pilot, if you will, into Chad Daybell's delusions, part 3, Behind Bars. So. Are we ready? Are we ready to take a listen?
Yeah, we are.
To Chad's letters? Okay, here we go. This is Chad Daybell, in his own words, letter 1.
Hello, my friends. This is Chad Daybell, writing to you from my cell in Idaho's maximum security institution. This is the first of several letters I will send. I want to thank everyone who sent me cards and letters while I have been incarcerated. Your kind words of support really helped me. I cherished each one. I arrived here at the prison in June 2024, and I suppose you could say I've settled in. As for death row itself, I won't be sharing details about my daily schedule or information about my fellow inmates. As the newest arrival on death row, it isn't my place to talk about such things. It really is a different world in here, but I'm surviving, and I spend a lot of time working on my upcoming appeals. I express my gratitude to each of you who have been part of my life. While I was in the Fremont County Jail, I spent thousands of hours in an isolation cell. I wasn't allowed to have a clock, and it often felt like time stood still. During those challenging days, I would reflect on my life, working forward from childhood to more recent years. As memories came to me, I would write down the names of the people who had been positive influences in my life. I felt strengthened as I remembered my extended family members, neighbors, co-workers, school classmates, business associates, church members, and friends I have been privileged to know.
They're all
You
like,
have all
we don't want to
enriched
know
my
him.
life in so many ways. I am using this method to share my story because I want you to receive it uncensored and unfiltered directly from me.
Raw and real.
How I have been portrayed in the media. Frankly, those portrayals of me are unrecognizable. I am not the man the media has created. I am not a cult member who should be feared. I am not a conspirator or a killer. I never have been. I am a father, a grandfather, a husband, a son, a brother, and a friend with a firm faith in the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Of course.
I have recently been able to have a few in-person visits with several of my family members, and those have been wonderful. I will always be grateful for the unconditional love and support these family members have given me. When people find out that my relatives have visited me, they usually ask them, "How has he changed?" My relatives give the same response. He hasn't changed, and he's the same Chad we always knew.
Which is a problem.
That answer after hearing a different story for so long. I am still the quiet, gentle person you all know.
Oh, God.
I have always been a peacemaker, even now in prison. I have never caused anyone's death and never conspired to commit such acts against anyone. I share in your sadness, pain, and grief over the deaths of Tammy, Tylee, and JJ. I don't have all the answers even now, but I'm grateful a more complete story will be shared during my appeals process. During my court trial, I followed my attorney's advice to sit quietly, not smile, and not show any emotion as evidence was presented. I know that is standard protocol for defendants in the courtroom, but I realize now that it made me appear to be cold and uncaring, which is the opposite of who I am. I assure you my heart was breaking many times throughout the trial, and there were moments I couldn't hold back the tears, especially as I saw and heard family members suffering the same feelings of anguish that I was experiencing. A key purpose of these letters is to share with you what I had hoped would have been explained in court. I will strive to make each letter informative and worth your time. I fully realize many people will never change their negative opinion of me. In this age of social media, podcasts, and the merging of the mainstream media with law enforcement, very few defendants are portrayed in a positive way. All I can hope for is that these letters can begin to generate feelings of healing, reconciliation, and understanding. Thanks again, my friends, for the many ways you have helped and inspired me throughout my life. Bookshelf. When I attended Springville Junior High in the early 1980s, I enrolled in a woodshop class. The instructor said we could build anything we wanted, so I decided to make a bookshelf. I designed it myself, and it was about 5 feet high with several shelves. I was pleased with how it turned out, and over the past 4 decades, that sturdy bookshelf has become our family's most enduring piece of furniture. Beds, sofas, tables, and recliners have come and gone, but the bookshelf has made every move with us, and my son now has possession of it. Our family's favorite books have resided on those shelves throughout the years, and I'm eager to share the significance of those books in upcoming letters. One of the most important books I have ever read is Life Everlasting by Dwayne S. Crowther. It was one of the first books placed on my new bookshelf after I discovered the book as a teenager. The book examines eyewitness accounts of more than 200 individuals who have ventured into the spirit world and returned to tell their experiences. It is LDS themed, but the truths it contains apply to everyone. I will be sharing quotes from it many times in upcoming letters. If you have any interest in where we came from before birth, why we are here on earth, and where we go after death, Life Everlasting provides those answers. The book was first published in the 1960s, but Dwayne released an excellent updated version in 2008 with 5 additional chapters. I would recommend that version. Musical notes. I like all kinds of music, and in my upcoming letters, I will sometimes mention songs that have been the soundtrack to my life. Rather than disrupting the flow of the letter by discussing a song's importance to me at that point, I will include these musical notes afterward to give added meaning and depth.
I want to make a
Most of
playlist.
my memories are tied to specific
Like a
songs that
Spotify
had
list.
an influence on me. However, during my first 3 years in the Fremont County Jail, I rarely heard music. It was a genuine hardship since my life had been immersed in music before my incarceration. Then, a few months before my court trial began, the jail staff provided a portable radio I could listen to when I was allowed into the jail's ball court. The court was a concrete rectangle with 20-foot-high walls that usually blocked the sun, but it was nice to breathe some fresh air. There was a giant communication tower directly above the jail that interfered with the radio reception. But if I stood in a certain spot in the ball court and held the radio at a tilted angle, I could hear a few stations. A country station, an oldies station, and a Christian station called K-Love came in the best. At first, I listened to the other two stations more often, but as I became more familiar with the K-Love songs and their emphasis on Jesus and uplifting topics, I came to rely on those songs to boost my morale. And one song that stood out to me was I'm So Blessed by the group Cain. It has a catchy beat, and the lyrics include the phrase, on my best day, I'm a child of God. On my worst day, I'm a child of God. Those were definitely some of my worst days, but the song helped me remember that the Lord was with me at all times, especially when the going got tough. So if you're having a hard day, click on the link, and hopefully the song helps lift your spirits.
So that's letter one. When the going got tough.
This might be my new book on tape. Audiobook.
Honest to goodness, right?
Yeah, I like this.
And it should be noted, look, because it does sound kind of AI. Chad sounds like AI when he talks. Like he normally he has the reading ability of a third grader, basically, where it sounds like he's reading something off of a piece of paper, even though he wrote it himself. His cadence is always off. So this is actually quite accurate. If you listen to any of his talking, his speech that we pulled from to create this, it sounds like this. Yeah. He's really a shitty speaker. And obviously the level to which he thinks people would be interested in any of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I was thinking about that. I mean, it is interesting. It's funny to kind of listen to, but if, you know, his self-importance of I'm going to write this because people need to know.
Yeah.
Well, is he writing for us? It feels like this is for us, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's that grandiose self-importance, which all narcissists seem to have and are completely oblivious that nobody gives a shit out in the outside world. But to them, it's like, this must be known. The soundtrack to his life. And it's funny because each of these letters is divided up into different areas. There's like the beginning monologue, and then there's like a music section, and then there's some other section usually in there as well. But they're all formatted kind of the same way, where he's giving us these little segments of his life, almost like he's delivering a talk show every time he puts a letter out.
Well, he is. He
really is.
Bookshelf, and then pause. Yeah. And then his story about his bookshelf. Great. Thanks.
Yep.
It stood the test of time.
It did stand the test of time. I wonder where that bookshelf is today. I wonder if his books are on it there at his children's home. There's a lot here. That's only letter one, and we're just getting into the beginnings of Chad Daybell. Do let us know your thoughts in the comment section about Chad Daybell and his letters from prison. There's a lot of them that we're about to go through. Let's get letter number 2 queued up, and we will we'll go to the second chapter. Sometimes the second episode is better than the pilot. Here's Chad Daybell. Again, this one's about 14 minutes, and we'll listen through it. Chad Daybell, letter number 2 from Chad Daybell.
This letter is devoted to Tammy. I loved her, and I still do. She was my life partner and the mother of our 5 amazing children. We built a wonderful family together. We were married for nearly 30 years, and I always sought to keep her safe and protected. She was the anchor of my life, and I never considered harming her.
Yeah.
Tammy had increasingly severe health issues in the final months of her life, but very few people knew about them. She was an intensely private person who rarely shared personal details with others, much less that her health was suffering. She would put on a brave smile in public and act as if nothing was bothering her, but even those of us who knew about her health struggles never expected her to pass away so suddenly, and her death has somewhat overshadowed the remarkable woman she was. I want you to get to know the living, vibrant, beautiful Tammy, who blessed so many people with her talents and unique traits. She was strong, yet so delicate. We were united in our parenting efforts, our religious beliefs, and in the publishing company we operated together for 15 years. She radiated goodness and charisma, generating a positive impact on everyone around her. She was very kind and loving, but especially to children and animals. She was always on the lookout for the underdog who might need a boost in life. Tammy and I got married in our youth. I was 21 and she was 19, and over the years we essentially became one. We didn't officially meet until after I returned home from a 2-year LDS church mission to northern New Jersey. I arrived back in my hometown of Springville, Utah in July 1989, and a few days later I saw my brother's 1988 high school yearbook on his shelf. I flipped it open and saw a student spotlight about a girl named Tammy Douglas. As I looked at her face, I felt a jolt of electricity pass through me. This beautiful girl with a dazzling smile had my attention. I realized she would have been a sophomore when I was a senior, but I couldn't remember her. I wondered how I could find out more about her. I asked my brother if he knew her, and he said she was working that summer for Springville City. I was in luck. Tammy later told me she had been keeping an eye on me since her sophomore year when I was on the student council. She had watched me perform in the crazy skits we did during school assemblies, and had also kept track of me in the school halls. When I was on my mission, she had even told her friends, "I'm going to date Chad Daybell when he gets home." I attended a church activity about a week after the yearbook experience, and I spotted Tammy immediately when I entered the room. She was playing volleyball, so I joined the other team. Soon we rotated and found ourselves 5 feet apart, staring through the net at each other. After a moment, she said, "I'm going to spike it in your face." I smiled, but the only response I could come up with was, "Oh yeah?" Very eloquent, I know, but in reality, she had left me tongue-tied. Tammy's eyes seemed to sparkle, and I was delighted that this petite, dynamic woman was clearly spunky as well. I was smitten. When I got home, I couldn't get her out of my mind, so I called her and asked her on a date. I was very relieved and excited when she accepted. Her parents later told me Tammy had happily danced around the living room after she hung up the phone. Our first date went great, and we became inseparable right from the start. We were both attending BYU Provo that fall and working part-time, but we spent every spare moment together. We became engaged to be married the night before Thanksgiving. I had been thrilled to discover Tammy loved music as much as I did, including some alternative bands such as Oingo Boingo and Depeche Mode. We loved to blast their songs in the car and sing loudly along. As Christmas approached, I told Tammy I had gotten her a gift she would love, but I had discovered she was a bit of a prankster, and I had become her new favorite target. So I decided to give her a little payback. I had been given a pair of really nice writing pens in a small rectangular box. On Christmas Day, I handed her the wrapped box, and she eagerly opened it. I kept a straight face as she pretended to be happy about the 2 pens. I said, "I thought you could use them at work. They're really nice." She nodded and said, "Thank you. I love them."
Pens?
She started to put the box aside when I said, "Maybe you should look underneath the pens." She removed the pens to find 2 front-row tickets to an upcoming Oingo Boingo concert. She let out a relieved laugh, then bowled me over, showering me with hugs and kisses. We were married in the LDS Temple in Manti, Utah, in March 1990, just over 7 months after we met. We held our wedding reception that evening in the Springville Art Museum, and seemingly half the town showed up to congratulate us. Tammy was a lovely bride, and I felt like the luckiest man on earth. We rented an apartment in Springville, and we really loved being newlyweds. I had a full scholarship to BYU and worked part-time, and Tammy accepted a full-time secretarial position with Springville City that paid quite well, so we felt rich. We loved to eat at several favorite restaurants, go to movies, and just be together. We had a fabulous time at the Oingo Boingo concert. In those first couple of years of marriage, we attended several others, including a very crazy B-52s concert where we danced the night away.
Love
Going to
Jack, baby.
concerts continued throughout our marriage.
I'm
and we
writing
would
down the
take our kids
playlist.
along as
Okay,
we got
good.
older.
I want to
And
make
we
a
also loved
Spotify
to hold
list.
family dance parties with our kids in the front room.
Family
Even
dance
after moving
parties.
to Idaho. Even now, the children tell me they'll get in the car, and certain obscure but meaningful songs will often be on the radio, and it feels like Tammy is saying she is nearby. Maybe those songs on the radio are just a coincidence, but either way, it reminds our children of their wonderful mother and the fun we had as a family. I was grateful for Tammy's complete faith and trust in God. In early 2004, I felt we should start our own book publishing company. I knew it would be a challenge, but I sensed it would be very successful. I told Tammy my feelings, and although she was apprehensive about the idea, she agreed to pray about it. In response, she said she received the strongest spiritual confirmation of her life and that we should move forward with it. We formed Spring Creek Book Company the following month, and by the end of 2004, we had published 24 books by several talented authors. We sold our books in hundreds of stores across the United States, including Borders and Barnes and Noble. We published several bestsellers, and over the years, we produced more than 100 books by 55 different authors. We won several awards from bookseller organizations, and Tammy deserved the credit. She was the backbone of the company, and she made great things happen through her promotional ideas and internet marketing. Tammy's mom, Phyllis, joined the company as our lead salesperson, and the two of them were a dynamic duo in selling books. I will stop here, but in the next letter, I will discuss our family's move to Idaho in 2015. Bookshelf. One of my duties as the editor-in-chief of Spring Creek Book Company was to sort through the many manuscript submissions we would receive. On the company website Tammy had designed, she had created a section on how authors should format their manuscript and the types of topics our company was looking for. As our success grew, we were receiving dozens of manuscripts each month. There were a lot of aspiring authors out there. However, we only had a few openings each year since many of our authors were writing additional books. But I still looked at each submission just to make sure we weren't missing a diamond waiting to be discovered. I would take the most promising ones home for Tammy to read through, and this team effort worked well in maintaining a high level of quality in our books. It was hard to send rejection letters to those authors we didn't select, but
That's
I
how
tried
bad
to
those must
recommend
be if
other
Chad's rejecting
publishers
you.
who might be a better fit for their books. One day I opened a manila envelope and pulled out a manuscript that immediately caught my eye. It told the story of Willard and Rebecca Bean, who were asked by LDS Church President Joseph F. Smith in the early 1900s to serve a mission in Palmyra, New York, the birthplace of Mormonism. The problem the Beans faced was that the church members had left Palmyra many years before, and the townspeople certainly didn't want them to return. But the Beans moved to Palmyra, endured initial persecution, and slowly began mending fences, literally and figuratively. Over time, they helped turn around the negative feelings there, purchased historic locations for the church, and finally concluded their mission more than 2 decades later. The manuscript, written by Rand Packer, was powerful and inspirational. I couldn't put it down. It was one of those rare moments as a publisher when you feel, whoa, this is great. I need to sign this book immediately. The book's title is A Lion and a Lamb, referencing Willard as the bold, sometimes brash lion, with Rebecca as the wise, sweet lamb who won over the townspeople with her kindness. I took the manuscript home for Tammy to read, and she was enthusiastic about it. We both knew it would be a bestseller. I contacted Rand the next day, and when we met, there was an instant connection, like meeting a dear friend. We signed a publishing contract and put the book into production The initial sales were strong, but then it just kept selling year after year, especially in the LDS bookstore in Palmyra itself. Word of mouth was strong, and rightly so, because it is a genuinely great story of faith and perseverance. During the same time frame, the accomplished LDS filmmaker T.C. Christensen had released several successful high-quality movies, and he was interested in producing one based on A Lion and a Lamb. The film's title would be The Fighting Preacher, after Willard Bean's tendency to use his fists as well as his tongue to preach the good word. A film deal was reached, and in July 2019, the movie had its world premiere in Salt Lake City. Tammy and I were invited as guests at the first screening, and we were very pleased with the film. It has all of the elements of drama, humor, and heartfelt emotion that are trademarks of all of TC's films. The Fighting Preacher had a long run in theaters, a rarity for LDS films, and is now available on streaming services. After the movie premiere, Tammy and I were invited to meet TC and the film's actors. Rand was there, and we shook hands and smiled at each other as if to say, "Can you believe where that little manuscript has led us?" We felt humbled we had played a role in bringing the Beans story to the world. Musical notes. Despite my love of music, I don't play any instruments, and my singing skills are barely adequate. I took piano lessons for about a year when I was 8 years old, but I was much more interested in learning to play baseball, and my blossoming musical career came to an end. Meanwhile, Tammy had a natural talent for playing instruments. She first learned to play the clarinet, then she switched to drums when she was part of the Springville High Marching Band. When our children began taking piano lessons, Tammy joined in and took lessons at the same time. Thankfully, Tammy's musical abilities have been passed down to our children, who all followed in her footsteps of learning to play the clarinet. As the 5 kids worked their way through Springville Junior High, Tammy and I enjoyed a decade's worth of seasonal band performances. Toward the end, we knew those songs pretty well. We were grateful to Mr. Booth, the band instructor, for the positive influence he was on our children. Some of our children have branched out to the synthesizer, guitar, and singing, and they have produced some wonderful songs. In our family, we all have different musical tastes, but one musical group we are united on is the British band Keane. With Tom Chaplin on vocals, Tim Rice-Oxley on keyboard, Richard Hughes on drums, and Jesse Quinn on guitar, their songs just clicked for us. Tammy and I attended the band's first Salt Lake concert and loved it. And from then on, any Keane concert in Utah became an event for the whole family. After we moved to Idaho, we still traveled back to Springville regularly. Keane was an essential part of our road trip set list. I believe Keane is currently on hiatus, but our family will always be big fans. One of Tammy's favorite Keane songs is Spiraling, which she loved to sing and dance along with. Enjoy.
And then there's a link like on the letter so you can listen to the song Spiraling. That's an interesting song. I don't know what the lyrics are, but I can only imagine. So Oingo Boingo.
So it's been a long time since I've listened to Oingo Boingo, and I'm not sure I've listened extensively, to be honest with you, but they're satire, right? I mean, it's like social commentary.
I don't know. We played like 1 or 2 songs by them, didn't we? On like Classic Mix back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one of them is Dead Man's Party or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. That it's kind of like about the mask of society, and the irony here that he's doing this from death row is just it's almost comical. Like he's writing fiction here. Like he's not living in the real world, which we've known for a long time. But to pull this out, to make him sound human is just like, what the hell? That they would sit there and blast music just like, a loving couple would do. Well,
they were together for a long time before Lori entered the picture. So, I mean, it's not like they sat there and he was like plotting to kill her for 15 or 20, however long they were together. They were together for a long time. So, I mean, I could see there being, a good point in the relationship before everything went to hell and Lori gets involved, where they're jamming out to Depeche Mode, Oingo Boingo, B-52s, and Keane. Whitney comes up in one of the next letters, by the way.
Oh, I can't wait for that. We can't play any Whitney, I'm assuming, right?
What's that?
We can't play any.
No, we don't want to do that. We'll get flagged.
Damn it.
But I can sing it. I can, if anyone wants to make a request, I'll be happy to break into it.
I'll have some ready for you.
I'll give some renditions. Yeah, we'll do the karaoke version and be like, I want to dance with somebody. It'll be great.
This whole nostalgic take, though, on their loving marriage. It just
weird.
Makes me sick. Yeah.
Let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Okay. What if Chad didn't do any of it? Like, what if Chad is just the moron that sat there, watched his wife get murdered under the hands of Alex Cox and Lori Vallow? Like, what if Lori and Alex were behind all of this and Chad is just too stupid? Not that he wasn't aware that shit was going down and like people were dying around him, but what if he was just, he was a bystander, whipped, yes, but also not raising his hand and saying, this is not okay. And to go on knowing the kids are dead in the backyard or did he just believe that they were somewhere else and just went with whatever Lori said to him?
You know, you've got to be really careful when you hand your heart over to somebody, because if you are so enamored by this person and so taken with them, I pray to God that they're a good person for you, because if not, if you are that wrapped up in it, you could end up like Chad Daybell. I mean, that's a very real theory that you're talking about, that he was so intertwined with her that he couldn't see anything that she was doing as wrong. He saw it. It didn't look right, but he trusted her so much.
Yeah. It was like this blind faith that he had for her. I don't know. I mean, because if you look at the evidence, yes, the bodies were found in his backyard without a doubt, but Alex Cox was there when the bodies were being buried. I mean, he's the one that seems to have phone ping. Alex is the one who has like physical location data putting him where everybody died. So it seems like Alex was thoroughly involved. Was Alex involved with Chad though? Like, were they doing this together? Or, did Alex sneak into their house or something and kill Tammy? Because there were strangulation marks on Tammy of asphyxiation. And so that's the big question there. And that's, I think, what makes a lot of people, including myself, think Chad did that. Chad was part of that, because they originally ruled her death natural causes. And they had to exhume her body to then they realized there was asphyxiation. But was it Chad? Or was it Alex Cox? Was it Lori wanting Chad and carrying all of this out through Alex Cox, and Chad's just the doof that's sitting there? Oh, she died of natural causes. Your kids, they're missing. They're doing this. They're doing that. They're zombies. You found another place for them to go. They're not in my backyard, melted in Home Depot buckets. I wonder how much he knew of what they were doing, or if he was part of what they were doing. I don't know the answer to that at the end of the day. He's certainly guilty as shit and needs to be put away, because he at least had some sort of knowledge that things were really fucked up here. But I do wonder how much he actually had a hand in the murders, physically carrying them out. Not knowledge, but actually chopping up the bodies, that sort of stuff.
It's a really good question.
I don't know. I mean, because there's not a lot of DNA in this case where like Chad's DNA is like on any sort of murder. I mean, as far as I remember, I don't believe there was. If I'm wrong on this, and somebody in the comments here has another, like, what about this? Glad to hear it, because I'm doing my own searches as we're doing this and trying to remember all the details of this case. But there really is, I think, somewhat of an argument to be made that maybe Chad is not the one who committed the murders or planned the murders, but was there in some way, shape, or form a participant, but maybe not in the way we think. I don't know.
They were pulling the strings. He was the puppet.
Yeah.
And, maybe at some point he just lost all ability to make decisions for himself.
I don't know. I mean, there's so many weird aspects to Chad Daybell, and that's where because he just listen to him. He's never come across as the guy that's capable of doing this shit of like, I'm going to go, slaughter these 2 children in my backyard, burn them and bury their bodies.
Yeah.
It just he doesn't strike me as the Alex. Yeah. Lori. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't know. I wonder how much of just a total oaf he was.
Well,
I don't know.
I think he was a big oaf. I think like you said, he might have just been a moron. And that's a real possibility that he just didn't have agency in this relationship. And he was so whipped that he just couldn't step back and go, okay, my woman's nuts. I got to shut this shit down. He just went, no, honey, the little missus wants to do this.
Like, these letters do not justify anything. And in no way do I think he's an innocent human being. It's it's another way of looking at this case. Because what's on the surface isn't always what's real. Even though some people get convicted of this or that, it doesn't always mean that that's exactly how things went down.
Yeah.
And and there's so many twists to this case. I do wonder. I think it's worth asking the question just to examine the answer. Let's listen to one more of these today. We have there's 2 more after this, and we'll do them tomorrow. And bonus, the Elena, what was it? The Elena and what's letter? The other.
Hang on, I looked them up. Hang on.
Chat. No, chat.
Not chat. Hang on. I looked them up. I'm printing them off. It is James
and Elena. This is the loin fire letters, where the spontaneous combustion of the loin, or whatever he said. Yeah. We're going to put that in Chad's voice as well. We've done dramatic readings of that on the program in the past. We're going to have Chad read it next. So that'll be coming up later in the week as well. So you don't want to miss that. So press subscribe. Let's now take a listen to Chad Daybell's 3rd letter from prison. Hear more about his musical taste, his book reviews, and more about life, it sounds like, of moving to Rexburg, Idaho with Tammy. Let's take a listen.
My previous letter concluded with Tammy and I moving with our children from Utah to Idaho in 2015, and I will continue from that point. We bought a home north of Rexburg in an area known as Salem. Our children were enrolled at either Brigham Young University, Idaho, or Sugar Salem High School, and they made some wonderful friends. Tammy also flourished in our new surroundings. She loved the rural lifestyle with plenty of property to create her own little farm. She'd always had a soft spot in her heart for animals, but in Springville, we'd had a small yard that limited the types of pets we could have. However, soon after we arrived in Idaho, Tammy began to assemble an ever-growing family of pets, including chickens, pigeons, cats, a rabbit, and of course, Tammy's favorite pet, Indian runner ducks. She named them all and enjoyed caring for them. She also created several garden areas around the property she would carefully maintain. After moving to Idaho, Tammy and I stayed busy running our publishing company. I was the president and editor-in-chief, while she was the vice president and chief financial officer. I was also making good money writing a weekly online column, along with receiving royalties on my published books. We felt blessed. So Tammy didn't need to work beyond her company duties, but several years earlier in Springville, she had taken a part-time position as the computer lab teacher at our children's elementary school. She loved working with the students, and the job was very rewarding to her. When we prepared to move to Idaho, Tammy looked for a similar position, and she was hired as the assistant librarian at Madison Middle School in Rexburg. She was later hired as the librarian at Central Elementary in Sugar City, which was much closer to our home. She also took on the task of creating a computer lab at the school, modeled after the one she'd had in Springville. I would visit Tammy at the elementary school every couple of weeks, and I helped her out during open house events such as back to school night. It was fun to be greeted by the students as Mrs. Daybell's husband. Tammy had always strived to be physically fit, and in Idaho, she turned part of our front room into her workout area. She enjoyed doing yoga, and she liked to play several exercise video games such as Just Dance, Walk It Out, and Exerbeat. It wasn't until the final year of her life that she started having noticeable physical setbacks. She caught a cold during the holidays and she battled chest congestion and a deep cough throughout early 2019. She was also experiencing menopause symptoms with regular hot flashes. She was now 48, but she said she felt she had aged 10 years in just a few months. Her exercise routine faded away, and she became content to just sit on the couch, watch TV, and work on her laptop. My children and I encouraged Tammy to visit her doctor for a full health exam, but she resisted going. She had grown up with a firm belief in using holistic medicine and natural healing remedies to regain her health. I had seen these methods produce many positive effects over the years, with Tammy having rapid recoveries. But this time seemed different, as if something had shifted within her body. I regret not being more insistent in having her get a physical exam, because there were 4 major reasons for concern, and they all got worse as 2019 progressed. First, there were Tammy's lengthy colds and prolonged coughing fits. Second were her lethargy and overall lack of energy. This wasn't the same woman who could work in the garden and care for her animals all evening without stopping. She began using the phrase "need to sit down" almost daily after any sustained physical activity. The third reason for concern were her swollen joints and bloating in her abdomen. Tammy initially tried to brush off these symptoms as temporary water retention, but they never went away. One day she came up to me and partially lifted her shirt. She grabbed hold of her belly and said, "Look at this. I can almost hear my gut sloshing around." Around that same time, Tammy and my son attended a health wellness fair. They were examined by a nurse who was bothered by how swollen Tammy's legs were and that she had developed varicose veins. The nurse urged her to see a doctor about it, but Tammy refused. She finally admitted that her condition might be more serious when she called me into the bedroom one afternoon. I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, wiping away tears from her eyes. It was late August 2019, and the new school year was about to begin. As she sat on the bed, she had a pair of pants halfway up her legs. She said, "These pants fit me just fine at the end of the school year. Now I can't even get them over my hips." She stood up and demonstrated to me in frustration none of her other school pants fit either. We went to the store the next day to buy replacements, and she ended up having to go up 2 pant sizes. She was very discouraged about it, and she eventually resorted to wearing full-length skirts most of the time to school. The fourth cause of concern was a series of fainting spells. Tammy felt her equilibrium was being affected, as well as her stamina. It wasn't unusual to find her in the kitchen with both hands on the counter with her head down. She would say, "I'm okay. I'm just a little dizzy." Tammy's first major fainting incident happened in April 2019. She had finished putting the animals away for the night, and as she crossed the back driveway, she blacked out and crashed forward onto the asphalt, injuring her wrist. She came into the house and explained what happened, saying her wrist might be broken. I urged her to go to the emergency room, but she refused. She took an herbal remedy instead, and the pain went away in a few days. That summer, we went to the LDS temple, and during one of the ceremonies, Tammy fainted, collapsed backward, and then threw up all over the front of her dress. She was very embarrassed as the temple's medical team rushed into the room to care for her. In September, she essentially repeated her fall in the back driveway. She fell in almost the exact spot and re-injured her wrist. This time, she didn't object when I insisted on taking her to the doctor, who prescribed pain medication and gave her a wrist brace to help heal the damage. I suggested she take a couple of school sick days to recuperate, but she shook her head and said, "No way. You know how much I hate a substitute messing up the library. I'll just sit there if I have to." From that day on, the setbacks came more frequently. Her nose was running constantly, and she would have sneezing fits. She also began to complain she was having out-of-body experiences. She described how her spirit would hover above her body for a few seconds at a time. In early October, one of those incidents happened while I was in the living room and she was in the kitchen. I suddenly heard a loud crash, and I rushed into the kitchen to find Tammy had actually fainted into the open fridge. She had landed hard against one of the shelves and was slumped down in the bottom half. I helped her stand up and told her I was very worried about her. She just waved her hand and asked me to help her lay down on the couch. The day before she passed away, she came home completely worn out from setting up the displays for the school's upcoming book fair. That evening, she told family members she wasn't feeling well and later had a bad coughing fit before throwing up. We went to sleep, and when I woke the next morning, she had passed away. I will describe that terrible morning and subsequent events in a future letter. But as word spread of her death, everyone was devastated because she had been such a powerful, wonderful influence to so many people. We all feel that loss every day. I miss her and love her. Tammy was a true angel on earth, and I know she is still watching over our family. My children and I have felt her presence many times since her death. We sense she is particularly interested in her precious grandchildren. We believe families can be together forever in heaven, and although she has moved on ahead of us, we know we will be reunited with her someday. Bookshelf.
Bookshelf.
Members of the LDS Church seek to find their ancestors because we believe that if people don't learn about the gospel of Jesus Christ in this life, they will have the opportunity to do so in the spirit world after they die. We believe they will be able to reunite with their loved ones there and live as families in heaven. That's why the LDS Church builds beautiful temples across the world, so gospel ordinances can be performed in behalf of our ancestors. Throughout the 1990s, that was a key focus for us and our extended family members. We completed the temple work for hundreds of ancestors over a period of years. Then later on, we discovered that a woman named Rachel Marlar had been overlooked in our records. Several years had passed since the temple work had been done for Rachel's parents and siblings, and we sensed she was very anxious to join her family in paradise. We submitted Rachel's name for temple work, and when family members performed ordinances in Rachel's behalf, they could feel her presence in the temple, as if she was watching them take place. The unusual part came 2 days later when Rachel appeared to Tammy's grandma, Lucille. Rachel stood at the end of Lucille's bed as a spirit dressed in white, and she told Lucille how grateful she was that she could now join her family in paradise. One interesting fact is that soon after Rachel visited Lucille, we found an actual photo of her taken in the 1800s. Lucille saw the photo and verified that the woman in the photo was the same woman who had appeared to her in her bedroom. That is why when I wrote Chasing Paradise, the main family has the last name of Marlar, and why Lucille plays a key role. As I wrote the novel, it evolved into a full-blown adventure that takes place both on Earth and in the spirit world as a young woman seeks to reunite with her family in paradise.
Oh my God.
Musical notes.
This
Tammy and I
Whitney?
enjoyed taking our kids on several day trips each year. One memorable trip was when we decided to visit the city of Preston, where the ultimate Idaho movie Napoleon Dynamite was filmed. Our family has watched the film often enough that we can quote the dialogue by heart. For this little adventure, Tammy printed off an online guide and map that showed the locations where key scenes took place. We drove slowly past the downtown landmarks, then stopped to take photos next to Napoleon's tetherball pole. Finally, we began our quest to find the Dynamite family home. It was surprisingly quite a ways out of town, but we found it. Growing up, the song Private Idaho by the B-52s was my main connection to the Gem State. But that song is clearly not a fair representation of the lifestyle or the musical tastes of Eastern Idaho, where Rexburg is located. A better fit is Tim McGraw's Where the Green Grass Grows. Just replace the line about his corn popping up in rows with spuds, and it works. I love driving in my truck along the Fremont County back roads with the windows rolled down, potato fields on every side, and the Grand Tetons in the distance. I just remembered one detail. It snows about 9 months of the year, but we certainly stayed busy during the winter. Our youngest son was in the high school pep band and was also a star in the school musical, and it was fun to watch him as we sat among our friends and neighbors. I also enjoyed cheering for the Sugar Salem athletic teams. Then the snow would melt for a while, and we would explore the outdoors, such as Mesa Falls or float down the Henry's Fork River. Three of
Is that where it ends?
That's where it ends.
Oh shit! I gotta take a look at that. Feels like it got cut or something. Tim McGraw, where the green grass grows, adding to the playlist.
I'm a huge Napoleon Dynamite fan, so now I feel a little conflicted.
Yeah, I mean, you.
Gosh, Tina.
Now you got a whole new way of looking at it. You picture Chad Daybell standing in front of the house on the tetherball pole with Indian runner ducks standing by Tammy. Yeah. I don't know. There was a comment that was made, he was a fiction writer, so he could be, not that he was a good fiction writer. His books are horrible, but I mean, this could be it certainly could easily be a work of fiction, but I am curious, like every letter, we're getting to learn a little bit more about what actually, in his words, happened in that room. I mean, he says he went to bed, woke up the next morning, and she's dead. So when did someone come in and asphyxiate her if it wasn't him?
Yeah, it leaves a lot of time, doesn't it?
I don't know how it couldn't have been him. And I think that's why he was, brought up on the charges that he was. I mean, unless he took some Ambien and then Alex came in at night with a pillow and just I don't know.
If the loved one in your life was dealing with, and I realize some people don't believe less in modern medicine and Western medicine and all that kind of stuff. But at some point, if someone you're with is that sick,
yeah,
don't you just say, listen, enough's enough. I love you and I appreciate your thought process, but I'm sorry. You are going in. We're gonna figure out what's going on with you.
I'm not going to get real personal here, but listening to Chad talk about, to me, what sounds like she had some concurrent symptoms of severe menopause and then something else on top of it.
Yeah, it could be like a thyroid disorder or something that could be very, very easily helped.
Right, correct. So something going on there that was undiagnosed properly. I'm just saying properly, and this is my own view. But I went through something very similar to this. I'm going to tread lightly here. I'm not going to say I didn't get a lot of support, but felt very on my own. With a lot of it. So hearing him talk about how he understood what she was going through, I actually felt like he was being quite compassionate. It was a very weird, oh my God, he's talking about her like he truly cares and is concerned.
But is it afterward though? Like, was he really that way in person, or is this the after effect of him writing about how concerned he was?
Correct. And that's where the weirdness comes in. I'm not sure if it's just him being the fiction writer making the story sound good, and he was really a piece of shit during her time when she needed some support. I don't know, but I could relate for a few minutes. Like, even Chad Daybell was.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to respect someone else's opinions, or like you can do what you want with your own body. That's bottom line. But I could, if you're with somebody and they're clearly having health issues and their remedies or solutions are not doing anything for them, but they're still believing in them, it would be really hard to be on the other side and be like, look, this could be helped. Your belief system is not right. It's not fixing anything. So as much as you want to believe this is helping you, this could probably give you a better shot at it. But at the end of the day, it's up to that individual what they want to do with their own health. But I could see that being very frustrated. I'm like, I mean, I would certainly, at the end of the day, it's their choice, but I would certainly be like, then what happens to you is on you at some point. When you can get the help that you need, you're choosing not to.
Here's the other aspect, and I don't want to pull the woman card here, but having hit menopause, like going 90 miles an hour into a brick wall, and not getting support from a lot of sides, including my physician, who completely gaslit me and told me that it was just anxiety and depression. It's really hard in that moment to act rationally and really figure out what you need to do to make your life better. So I totally understand. I mean, you come across as being absolutely batshit crazy during that time, especially if you're not getting the help that you need.
Well, and you're hearing 50 different things from different people. Like this one's saying this one's saying that. And honestly, sometimes you have a physician where the previous patient, the answer may have simply been anxiety and depression.
Correct.
And the next one, and it presents the same way. You know, it might be something where it's like, well, this is what we think it may be. It's not that they're perfect at answering those questions, but they're doing, the best that they can based on the information they have. But clearly with something like this where it keeps going, it's almost like there was this feeling of they were okay if she died. And she was okay if she died, rather than actually trying to find a solution. But if you think, I can't imagine what life in the Chad Daybell household was like, where death might not have been a little more pleasant of an idea than continuing to be married to that fucker. I mean, because we're hearing the sugar-coated version of it right now. When you celebrate death as being much better than anything you're doing in the living world, and this is how you live your life, death becomes a viable option, even when it probably shouldn't be. Yeah, when it probably shouldn't be. Exactly. There's more to come from the Daybells. We'll get into more of the letters tomorrow. But in case you're playing along at home, you need Depeche Mode. You need Oingo Boingo, B-52's song Private Idaho, Keen, Spiraling, and Tim McGraw where the green grass grows if you're making that playlist at home.
That's going to screw with my Apple playlist because it always takes what I listen to and gives me my own created playlist. So anybody playing along, be careful what you put in there. Next week, you might be really surprised.
And now here's your long distance dedication on the Chad Daybell Top 40.
Ooh, we should mix in Chad Daybell writing a long distance request to Casey Kasem.
Dear Casey.
Ooh, that's for later in the day. I got something to do.
God, Tony's making notes. Here we go, Chad.
Here's your long distance dedication.
Oh, wait for tomorrow. It's going to be great. It's a Daybell extravaganza this week.
Oh my God, I started something, didn't I, Stacey?
Yes, you did. I got to write it out. Casey.
You should know better by now.
Daybell dedication.
What's wrong with you?
Maybe we'll mix a little Robert Stack in there too or something.
It was a little dog named Snuggles.
Dear Casey, like the Indian runner ducks, and I did too. Dear Chad, here's Oingo Boingo, your long distance dedication. We're going to go with more of that tomorrow in just a few minutes. Robin Dreeke, retired FBI Special Agent Chief for the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program, going to be joining us, giving us some grounded insight on everything that we've been going through and everything that we've been seeing over the last week in relation to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. That is coming up. But before we get there, just to give you a little more refresher on the insanity of the Daybells, here's Lori Vallow just a few months ago at her sentencing, reading or telling her truth about what's going on. Let's take a look at that.
Representing myself at these two trials was a constitutional right that I exercised. I could not have done so without my team. Annalena Ramirez, my paralegal, Jeff White, my investigator, and Pamela Hicks and Robert Abernathy, my advisory counsel. I acknowledge their diligence and hard work in helping me exercise that right. They worked tirelessly, and I appreciate them. Representing myself, I have learned much about the law through this process, and I'm grateful for the knowledge that I have gained. Knowledge is eternal, and it is only love and the knowledge that we acquire in this life that we take with us into the next. I have studied the rules of law, case law, and the like. I was amazed and enlightened as my understandings were completely changed from before I started this process. Before this long court journey, I only had basic understanding of the judicial process. I was of the understanding that both parties would be able to get up at a trial and each tell their side of the story, but I soon learned that the rules of law do not allow that.
Actually, they do.
The process is much more complex than that. It is not designed for that. Although the Constitution of the United States was designed for that. The rules of law negate most of that. As a defendant, I was precluded from calling several witnesses. Other witnesses for the defense were precluded from testifying things that they did witness. As a defendant, I was precluded from asking law enforcement specific questions. I was also precluded from admitting documents that the state turned over to the defense as discovery. The founding fathers of this country did not intend for the rules and laws of trial that have been implemented into this justice system to make it impossible for the accused to defend themselves. Their objective was quite the opposite. They advocated for a fair and impartial and speedy trial. It was never their intention for people to be sitting in jail for years and years waiting to be tried while the state continues to try to gather new evidence against them. This is what our injustice system has become. Men and women sitting in jail for years and waiting to be heard. The constitutional right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness thwarted. My case is not unique. There are many here in Maricopa County that have been in jail almost 10 years waiting to be tried. The conditions of this jail are not for long-term confinement. You do not have access to direct medical care. You do not have access to proper nutrition. You do not have access to sunlight. You do not have access to decent dental care. In fact, when you have been in Maricopa County Jail for 1 year, they come to your door and offer you a vitamin D supplement because you have not been in the sun in a year. Imagine this for years. It is inhumane. The state of Arizona, according to the laws, since I am a prisoner from another state, only had 90 days in which to give me 2 speedy trials. That's 3 months. I arrived here at MCSO on November 30th, 2023. That is over a year and a half, 20 months specifically. That is over 6 times the amount of time it should have taken for me to have these 2 trials. But Arizona leaves this law up to the judge's discretion, and the judge has the power to extend your trial at his will. Even though the 6th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States proclaims otherwise. 98% of all cases in Maricopa County end in plea deals where the accused plead guilty. And I'll tell you why. It's so miserable in that jail that they plead guilty so they can go to the prison and have decent food, decent sunlight, and a chance to live. 2% of all cases in Maricopa County that actually do go to trial, of all the cases that actually do go to trial, only 0.2 end in acquittal. That is 1 out of 1,200 people who go to trial go home.
That's actually not the correct stat.
Is that a system designed to convict you? The rules of law governing trial assure that. As you witnessed in my 2 cases, the judge supports the state to achieve this outcome. So here we are. The state of Arizona has accomplished its intention. 1, to extradite me from Idaho. 2, to convict me. And 3, to add to my ledger of lifetimes. The state used countless taxpayers' money to transport me, house me, millions of dollars to wrongly convict me on 2 charges that they made sure judicially that I could not defend myself against. I know political aspirations, raises, and job promotions were at stake. So congratulations. I was convicted in the media long before I went to trial. We all know that there was no way for me to come to Arizona and get a fair, impartial, or speedy trial. And now that fact has been proven. The state of Arizona brought me here when I was already serving 5 life sentences. Now I will serve 7 life sentences. Will that be enough? Will that be enough? I want everyone to know that I mourn with all of you. I am sorry for your pain. Losing those close to you is painful, and I acknowledge all of the pain, and I do empathize. I feel it too. If I was accountable for these crimes, I would acknowledge it, and I would let you know how sorry I was. But I have witnessed for myself what it is like to leave this mortal existence and return home when I temporarily died in the hospital giving birth to my daughter, Tylee. When our spirit leaves our body, and we return to the pure energy state in the spirit world, we immediately no longer feel hate, anger, envy, or resentment. I promise you. We come to earth to experience these emotions, but these emotions are immediately replaced by a blissful, heightened sense of peace, love, joy, and well-being. The moment our spirit leaves our body, we feel more alive than we ever did on earth. And we have deep empathy for those we have left behind. We do not want our loved ones to grieve or be sad. We know that they will because that's a mortal experience, but they come to comfort us. We immediately know the minute you leave your body, you are aware of who you are, why you came to earth, and that we will all be together again soon, and that this separation is only temporary. All of the cares and pressures and problems immediately melt away. And after comforting our loved ones, we move on with our eternal life, continuing to pursue knowledge and wisdom and understanding in eternal progression. Heaven is a very busy and happy place where everyone is engaged in projects that they love to do. That includes Joshua, that includes Tylee, that includes Tammy, that includes Charles. No one there, none of these people are seeking revenge or justice. So although we miss our loved ones, and I do too, I assure you that they are busy and happy and peaceful. I have felt the kind of contentment that they feel now, and I try to duplicate that here. So whether I'm giving 5 life sentences or 7 life sentences, I will continue to try to uplift and help and strengthen those around me. It does not matter where you serve on earth as long as you do it with love. It doesn't matter if I'm given 7 lifetimes or the death penalty like my husband. What things look impossible to man are easy for Jesus. Jesus tells us in the Bible not to judge, but this whole entire justice system is just that. So I want you to watch, because God will show the world great miracles. I will continue to love everyone I come in contact with, and I will turn this battle over to God. If this is God's battle, then the math doesn't matter. 7 lifetimes or the death penalty doesn't matter. God's miracles will abound. When a soldier goes off to war, he is a soldier. When a soldier comes back from war, he is a warrior. And Jesus is in the prisons. He is turning his soldiers into warriors. For the prisoners shall go free. Sometimes victory doesn't look like victory until it's finished. Prisoners who have been told that they will never go free will be free. And I want you to expect miracles, and I want you to watch for them, because you will see. We fear not what man can do, because God's warriors surround us. When the battle is relentless, and this one has been for over 6 years, remember, God is building his army of warriors in the prison system. He is turning Sauls into Pauls. When Jesus is sending his servants into the prisons to prepare his warrior team, we will be there only until this purpose is complete, and then the warriors will walk free. We are redeemed by Jesus Christ, so we are free right now. But his chains will break, prison walls will fall, the power and majesty of God will be revealed. When Jesus is ready, he will call his warriors from the prisons, and we will walk free, and we will serve him. I will quote Moroni, the great prophet, from Moroni 8:16, and he says, "Behold, I speak with boldness, having authority from God. I fear not what man can do, for perfect love casteth out all fear." And in Ether, Moroni says, "And now, if I have no authority for these things, judge ye. For ye shall know that I have authority when ye shall see me, and we shall stand before God at the last day."
Daybell, giving her speech, if you will, at her sentencing several months ago to wrap up our conversation about Chad Daybell for the day. We're going to move on now to the latest in the Charlie Kirk assassination. Robin Dreeke, retired FBI special agent, former chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program, joining us. Robin, as always, thank you so much for being here. I know we've been texting on and off throughout the weekend, trying to solve the world's problems, as we always do.
I'm sorry. I just, how refreshing is it to listen to Daybell go nuts?
This is a weird world we're living in, where I know.
Anyway, I interrupted. Go ahead.
You've been on talking about this all throughout the weekend on Fox, on News Nation, and whatnot. I want to get your take here, just kind of overall. What new things have we learned over the weekend? What has been standing out to you? I know the big question most people have, and I don't know that we're ever going to truly get a satisfactory answer to it, but is the why. What led to all of this? What have you been finding out?
Quite a few things. Nothing that's shockingly unusual with him as an assassin, but what's interesting though is anytime someone kind of fits a pattern, I like to kind of see what doesn't fit a pattern, because it's a lot easier to kind of see what's different than there is what is. And with him, we're getting a lot of leakage. This is not the case where we're hunting for someone for months or weeks or even just a number of days, because he was caught pretty rapidly. Mm-hmm. And the reason why he was caught so rapidly is multiple areas here that we're gaining a lot of data on to help us assess what we're seeing. And that is not just was he attempted assassination in front of 3,000 people, but also he surrounded himself with people that he had a lot of leakage with. Mm-hmm. And no one's protecting him. And so that says a lot too. So we can do a little bit deeper dive there. And so again, everything's conjecture, because he's not saying anything himself yet. Yeah. And I say that yet because, just look at the arc of this guy. And that's what we'll talk about. What I'm seeing is this guy has an arc. This guy's arc is he won't shut up. Yeah. And so even he was like, I was on Fox this morning, and they're saying that he's been described as quiet, which is interesting because since we're getting so much data from people around him that are sharing a lot of information about him, he doesn't sound quiet.
No, what I would garner from that is quiet, probably around his family, I'm going to guess, because so
that's what we're seeing.
And maybe not so much around his peers or people who thought in a similar way as him. And what we've learned, he's a 22-year-old, grew up in Washington, Utah, near St. George, suburban Republican family. His parents are registered Republicans. His father works in a kitchen countertop installation, and his mother's a social worker. The family is described as close-knit, outdoorsy, involved in the Mormon church, neighbors and family. They called him squeaky clean, no criminal record. On the surface, everything looked normal, and I say normal in quotes, in air quotes there. He was the oldest of three brothers, known for his academic success, 4.0 student, including a scholarship he got in 2021. A lot of reports indicate the family celebrated his achievements, spent time together on outings like camping and hunting. Again, you walk away from this, and the last thing you think is this guy's going to go do something like this. And there's certainly people in families that, are looked at as the black sheep or whatever you want to call it, where they disagree with the structure and the belief system of the group of that family. And you can have it either way. You can have very right-leaning families, very left-leaning families, and you have one or two that branch out, and they're diametrically opposed a lot of times with the views of the family. I don't know that. What do we know here on this? Do we know where he was leaning? I guess, and not that it justifies anything, but there's just been so much information that's come out on this thing, and it's been head spinning. I don't know what. I just don't know what to believe, what to know right now, because there's so much misinformation. There's so much coming out on social media that's just nothing but crap, just feeding into people's fears and anger, both ways. I mean, it's sickening. It's just like, what is this? Give me your thoughts.
This is what I've done all weekend nonstop.
Yeah.
Because and you're right on this one. There is so much data coming in that's created a lot of noise, and I can't stand noise because noise is distracting. People keep wanting me to analyze this symbol, analyze this etching. What's this mean? What's this mean? So I had to stop, and I'll walk everyone through my thought process and how I do this. And that is, so it's like, first of all, he does fit the exact pattern with some deviations of a lone wolf assassin. All right.
Sure.
So he's 22 years old. And I think I want to really point out this 22-year-old aspect too, because he is not at the age yet where the prefrontal lobe's fully formed. So he's definitely more inclined to emotional impulse, because I have said, and others have said, but I definitely said at the very get-go, it's not a professional hit because he had a plan, but just not a good plan. And then some people are saying, oh, but he ran circles around the Bureau and FBI. No. So, and what reason why I say that is because when your emotional brain is engaging, acting, strategizing, it is not a thoughtful brain. So let's just, and so I'll go on this point, then I'll go on the larger point.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at assessing, if we want to get in our own cult of comparison here, a really good example of someone who actually did have law enforcement running circles around themselves for years and years, who was a lone assassin, Ted Kaczynski.
Sure.
Yep.
There's a guy that sat in the back, strategized, employed, analyzed, took an action, learned, refined, did it again. So that one was working, and devastatingly. So this individual was not doing that. This is an emotionally hijacked individual. And so now let's look at boiling everything down to what would inspire, because again, we asked ourselves that question, how I reverse this. What would inspire someone to take this action? And so I go back, I take in all this data, and I think to myself, what is the most primal drive that we have as a species that inspires each of us to take action? Fear. All right, so if I understand as a species, fear is our greatest driver, and what applies to every single one of us, that we're always seeking our safety, security, and prosperity from our own point of view, what that means to us, and fear is my driver. So fear is what drove him. So then what happens is what inspired fear? So what inspires fear in general is fear of the unknown. And when do we have the unknown? And this really comes down to, I think, what the crux is that I've really boiled down here when I keep talking on the news, is that fear happens when curiosity dies. And so now we're going to put our way big conjecture hat on, and I'll apply to people in general, not to this particular situation, because I don't want to, we're just getting done talking about the Daybells, and they had an interesting religious background, and we have some challenges that there might have or may not have played an issue here. But what from my ideas and my conjecture happened is that he got rooted into being surrounded by a thought process on his beliefs and morals and ethics of the people around him, and it was put on him. And at a certain age, what happens is, at all of us as kids, as we're growing up, our families teach us how to be safe and to take care of us by judging the world around us. And they're going to instill in us our own morals, ethics, and beliefs until around age 9, 10, 13, basically when we go to middle school. Then all of a sudden we hit middle school and we start getting our own ideas. And then if you have a group of people around you that are doubling down on their lack of curiosity and shoving it in you, and you actually start getting different ideas without validating and exploring those ideas side by side in a healthy way, the potential to battle against that at some point is there. Not that this is what happened. I'm just walking us all through this where curiosity dies. So Dr. Diane Hamilton, she did wrote a great book called Cracking the Curiosity Code. And it's really, we are genetically and biologically coded for curiosity. It is actually what helped us evolve as a species. And when that gets crushed, fear ensues. And so what's a byproduct of fear is that rage, anger, discontentment, resentment, all those emotions start edging up, which then disconnects the entire cognitive brain and our thought processing. Then, so we're not being exposed to the validation we need in our thought process on one side, and so we're going to be attracted to another side. And this other side is where the online grooming happens, where the online radicalization, as they're calling it, is definitely happening. And what happens is they're doubling down on their lack of curiosity. And so they're validating all these negative thoughts, all these negative emotions. And they're taking someone who might have been predisposed, may have, because again, genetics or biology, or learned that we're all wound collectors or problem solvers, might have helped double down on a wound collecting victim and a lack of curiosity and escalated it and validated it. And then we get a critical life moment that happens that is a triggering event that takes us over from rage to action for violence. And, again, way early because they haven't explored all these things. I'm still thinking that we're going to discover through the investigation when we find out about it, if it goes to trial, that there was a moment in there that said, I've had enough. It looks like it, pure conjecture, it might be centered around his trans partner in some way, because there's theories, he's out there doing something to protect them. I think there's something around that relationship that's going to be that triggering moment. So that's my long, as I do all narrative answer, saying I think curiosity died, rage got reamped up on this online community where he was finding his own validation.
Do you think we're the society is encouraging people to not be curious anymore?
Yeah.
And that scares me. I'm seeing a whole generation, and I'm not ragging on the younger generation. That's not what I'm doing. I think there's a lot of brilliant people who are coming up behind us. But I also feel like we are being programmed to not think, that here's what you should believe and go forth.
Stacy, you're so spot on. So in doing my research on this too. So what happens on these radicalized online forums is the way algorithms work on all these social platforms is they will help you double down on this groupthink and this negative thought process, because what sells ad space? That. And so when you get more and more exposed to this, because that's what the algorithm keeps feeding you, you're going to keep getting more and more immersed into it. And so, it's funny because I always, as you all know, I always come back and relate it to my own kids and what they actually have selected to do on their own. My kids are not on social media. My daughter's on TikTok, but that's it. I mean, they don't maintain a presence. They don't post it. Matter of fact, even with my own kids, like my son has a great quote, and I got his permission to talk about it today. So my son, as I've said to you all before, he's an amazing jet pilot, Marine Corps jet pilot. And their training they do is it's pure chaos. They train him to deal with chaotic situations. And he's got this philosophy that I've never heard it quite put this way, but it was so funny. This guy, one of these instructors is known as, they'll go to the simulator before they do a flight, and he'll like blow up the plane. Basically, he'll fail so many systems that it's like Kobayashi Maru from Star Trek. There's no way to save the plane or save yourself, and they know they're in for it when they go to this with this one instructor. And I saw my son the other day, like last week, on his way to work to go fly and do this training session, and he goes, "Well, today's going to be a great learning day." And it's that mentality which is lacking, because instead of saying, "Oh, this guy's an ass," or no, today's going to be a great learning day. We're going to get some reps out of today. It's going to suck really bad, but I know I'm going to learn something from this. And so, to your point, Stacy, that is what is lacking, because that social media platform of the cult of comparison and showing everyone the 5-second highlight reel from the 24 hours of sucking your life. Just is not reality, and they get sucked into it because it's the lack of curiosity. And what happens is it's beat out of us at a young age. If curiosity gets beat out of us at like 6 or 7 years old because your parents just want you to shut up and do it as I say, it's never sparked. Einstein is who Einstein is because he was constantly doing these thought experiments. He had no money. He's acting as a patent clerk for years and years and years. His dad was a failing engineer, but he's an entrepreneur. And anytime something came up, he said, well, let's look at this. Let's examine this. And so all those things at an early age, that curiosity kept getting spurred. Leonardo da Vinci, same thing. Benjamin Franklin, same thing. All these great people in history are all about the curiosity. And so when you snuff it out, that's when bad things start happening.
Well, that energy has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
People who think in curious manners, who are naturally exploring everything in their environment, when you close them in a box, that energy has got to go somewhere. Yeah. And if you don't let it go into a creative outlet, oh, God help us, it's coming out sideways. And is that what we're seeing in today's world?
Yeah.
I feel like, when you look at this case, and this is just conjecture, just trying to observe and see what's going on here. When you have two very rigid lines of thinking. One, and they're both fear-based, where his very rigid line of thinking, he's been told his whole life, this is bad, this is horrible, you shouldn't do this. Very, the way it seems he was brought up. And I'm not saying it's wrong the way, I'm just saying this is how he was brought up from what we understand. So this is bad. Then he's discovering, he doesn't necessarily agree with that. He doesn't feel those same ways. Maybe he feels very differently. But there's a lot of shame over here to be even able to say these things out loud. So this, to me, on the surface, when I look at it, it goes, this seems like someone who was really lashing out, who had been in his own mind and in his own way of dealing with things, lack of problem solving skills here. Clearly, it looks like he felt very boxed in, and this is, rather than dealing with this in any sort of healthy way, he lashed out. And then the other side on this too, they feel very boxed in, and how dare this, somebody have this different opinion. We're going to lash this way. Nobody is doing any sort of problem solving or just trying to hear each other out and go, let's not be so afraid of each other. Let's listen to each other. Let's be curious about each other, because the solution lies in understanding each other and our differences. It doesn't lie in killing each other off because we have different opinions. But that is it feels like where we're at. It feels like this is where so much of the commentary is coming from online. And honestly, and I got to ask you about that in a moment too. I've seen so many things online over the weekend, and I have to turn it off and stop. But are you getting the feeling that other countries are honing in on this and using it to further pit Americans against one another? Because I swear to God, some of the stuff I've seen online from anonymous accounts and such are just designed to stoke anger and fear against each other. It's not necessarily always coming from somebody over here with a strong opinion or somebody over there with that strong opinion. I'm seeing so many things that look manufactured, that are put out there specifically just to piss people off.
Yep.
And just stoke the anger. I feel like there's so much of that going on right now, and it's a prime time to do it. I would not be surprised if you have foreign powers out there that are seizing this moment, and so many of us are going and taking a giant bite of that apple.
So going back to my roots of the world of counterintelligence, I will tell you, I'd be surprised if it wasn't the foreign actors doing a lot of that, because it's called active measures.
Yeah.
So Russia, I worked Russia most of my career, and there's one difference before Putin took over and after Putin took over. Before Putin took over the country, they called it, United States and NATO allies are number one. I don't remember which came first, chicken or the egg, but it was called the number one enemy. And then after he took over, they revamped Glasnost and all these things. Then it became the number one threat. And so nothing's ever changed. The easiest, and you and I have talked about this, I think, Tony, was the easiest, cheapest way to take down a world power like the United States is not to match us military for military. That'll never work. Our GDP is too high. You just can't. But what's really, really easy is to get a lot of bots and sow the seeds of discontentment. The greatest thing, because, and I'll be the glass half full kind of guy, the greatest thing we have as a country, that it actually was the hardest thing I ever had to work with, was the Constitution. I mean, we protect, all these things that people think about the FBI can do this and this and this, or monitoring everyone. Oh my God, it was the most challenging thing in the world to actually use a sophisticated technique beyond recruiting a confidential human source. Going to talk to someone to give you information, because anything else that required an intrusive enough in someone's personal life, it required an act of Congress almost to me. I mean, it was just so hard to do. And then you had to justify, you had to go up on it. It was a really, really laborious, rightfully so, because we have these civil liberties that we protect and we uphold regardless of politics. And what happens is that we have this Constitution, which gives us the freedom of speech. So it's a great tool and resource we have the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as a nation, but it's also the greatest vulnerability, because this is what these foreign actors will come in and do, because they will go on these online platforms. They will sow this discontent, because the greatest threat that we have, that any organization and institution has, again, let's look at my love of history. The thing that binds us together as a species beyond the 150 numbered tribes of the chimpanzees is our ability to have a belief system. And the greatest, believe it or not, the greatest belief we have is in these pieces of paper. It's like the only reason we exist as a country is because we have a collective group of people that believe in a piece of paper about this thing called the Constitution. The reason why we have commerce is because we believe in this thing called cash. Because we say it has value, it has value. Mm-hmm. And when people stop having trust and faith in a system, the system collapses within like this. Mm-hmm. And so what's the goals of these nation states and foreign actors and people that do not have our best interest at heart because they're battling for our resources? The easiest thing to do is have us defeat ourselves through a lack of trust and confidence in our organizations, institutions. And so that's why it's so important for when we see the negative, we flush it out, but also when we see the effort being made to reinstitute a trust and faith in our organizations, institutions, that we do so. And in cases like this, it's very, very probable that foreign actors are coming in to capitalize on people having distrust of each other, our institutions, our organizations, blah, blah, blah.
We're not good at deciphering when it's just someone else's opinion or it is someone that's trying to pit us against each other. I mean, we're good at pitting ourselves against each other by ourselves. But when we add that in, I don't think, I mean, how do we avoid any of this it feels like we're not bright enough as a society to recognize a lot of these things when it's being thrown at us like that. Mm-hmm. And whether it's a foreign actor or it is Joe Bob down the road with his opinion, we're not good at dealing with the content, whether it came from Joe Bob or if it came from Russia. We're immediately angered or diametrically opposed, and we don't have the curiosity there. How on earth do we pull this back where people don't just dig deeper into their tribes and then sow more seeds of hate against one another? I mean, it seems so damn hopeless right now.
Ego suspension is the hardest thing in the world to do, but it's the only solution to it. Again, 22 plus years of reps of learning how to let go of what I thought and try to embrace what someone else is saying. If you want to make that connection, that's the only way we're going to do it. I mean, just so here, we'll do our little thought experiment here. And we see this all the time in the movies. We see it all the time when it plays out, when someone posts it on the news. And we can actually do our little thought experiment right now regarding this assassin. Mm-hmm. So right now, he's not cooperating with law enforcement. All right. So, and they got him in isolation. He's not talking to anyone. But because we have a track record of understanding he's got a need to correct others, he has a need for pontificating and giving his thoughts and opinions, even if he's called quiet, he still has a need for a human connection. And so at some point, if you want to be successful in eliciting exactly what was on his mind, because he's got a record of telling you exactly what's on his mind, at some point, you put an empathetic law enforcement officer in there to have a conversation with him. And the way you have a conversation with him is to try to understand, hey, what was that inspiration to kind of start walking that path all those years ago? Mm-hmm. And you just sit and listen. Allow him to teach and educate you, because that's what he wants to do. And you be curious about those things. As he says one thing that you haven't quite heard before, you make note of it, you explore it. Again, you be actively curious. I can almost guarantee you that's exactly what is going to happen. Because think about this. We've seen people confess to horrible crimes. I know law enforcement officers all the time, and I say, hey, has anyone ever gotten a confession from someone? And all the hands go up. And I say to them, exactly what did you do to get that person to say things that weren't in their best interests, and yet they shared it anyway? Mm-hmm. And I said, it was because you're seeking their thoughts and opinions, or were you going on and on about what your own were? Were you talking in terms of what they thought was important, their challenges, their priorities, their pain points in life? Or are you lamenting about your own? Mm-hmm. 3, were you non-judgmentally, and that's the word, non-judgmentally actively curious, or are you sitting there in judgment? Because if you are going to inspire someone to share information with you, to make a connection, it's not about, you have to have the courage to know that you're not right. Or you might not be right from their point of view. From yours, yes, but no one cares. You have to have the courage that you can withstand, your own morals and ethics can withstand hearing someone else's point of view without judging it. And finally, you empower them choice about how they move forward. If you cooperate with me, I can be an advocate. You don't have to. And so when you apply these keys of communication, who wouldn't confess? Because everyone's looking for rationalization, the justification. They're called RPMs in interviewing, rationalizations, projections, minimizers. It all applies. Like, how do you make that conversation about them? We as human beings have a need to connect. We have a need to want to share. We have a need to be accepted for our thoughts, opinions, and ideas. And I guarantee you this, He completely feels justified in every action he took. Just look at that mugshot of him. Very smug, very arrogant, because he's not curious about anything else right now. And you put someone in there that's got the ability to do that, 100% I think he's going to confess. And confess. To the right person, he will share all those data points. I think his lawyer is going to tell him whether to confess or not.
Interesting.
I mean, we seem to be in a very different. Obviously, we are in a very different world than we were many years ago, and it's not like sending your children off to college and they're going to go explore new things. They're going to explore different ideas. Their opinions may change. They may try this belief for a little bit, try that. A lot of people do that. That's life. That's how we evolve. It's how we really figure out who we are from out of the nest. It's the dangers of those connections that we make. That seems to be the big difference than what we used to have. And we hear terms like radicalization and things like that. And a lot of times immediately, and we've talked about this the other week, the things that I think a lot of us of certain ages of, 30, 40, 50 plus, we think of like Islam and we think of 9/11 and that sort of radicalization. It's happening in your living room on video games. It's happening on, Call of Duty. It's happening on, and I'm not just trying to pick on a certain game. It's happening on all that sort of shit. And there's nothing wrong with playing those games. I get it. But there are people out there where it is being radicalized, and I know we think like there's this boogeyman in the corner that's pulling the kids in, and I'm going to radicalize you with this belief. They're radicalizing each other, just their own circles of hate and anger. And while we all simulate murdering each other, let's air all of our grievances. And there's not the loving critic or the adult in the room that says, everybody take a breath. Let's not keep getting so amped up in this. There's not the foreign actor or somebody else amping these kids. They're doing it to themselves because there doesn't seem to be anybody else that's telling them to take a break, or even if they are, they're feeling more empowered over here in this group of all these people who are just reconfirming their echo chamber of beliefs and having no desire to hear anybody over here saying, hey, take a breath. Life's more than this.
And they're not saying, they're not sitting around saying, hey, we're a bunch of radicals.
They're not, because they don't think of themselves as that. And I think that are we completely missing the boat here in this country where this stuff is going on literally in our own eyes, in our own rooms, our own living rooms, on our television? This stuff is happening directly in front, but we don't seem to grasp that that's what's going on. I don't think we want to admit it's going on. I don't think we want to accept that people can be so easily radicalized, which they can. And I don't think we don't want to think about this idea that there's this whole generation of young people that have been brought up in a very different world than the rest of us have, where fear has been the ongoing theme. This guy's 22. Fear's been the ongoing theme of society pretty much his entire existence. So when that's all you know, you look at the recipe of this stuff and you go, okay, I'm not surprised you have people that come to these sort of extreme, horrible, horrible ways of beliefs and have no tools of how to process this without going to violence. But we're not doing a whole lot to tamper that down or give people other directions to take that energy.
Let me throw something in. I'm wondering, Tony, you bring up a really good point that this is all that these people know in this age group. I'm wondering if, and obviously, Rob, and I know you're not a psychologist here, but I'm wondering, are these trauma responses? Are we putting these young people in such a state that they're always in this fear mode, that their cortisol is just going crazy? They are always in this looking over their shoulder kind of mentality. So they're always looking for the next threat. And they're not actually just taking a breath and able to relax, that they're always...
Everything's a threat. Everything's like a imperative, you're going to die threat almost.
Exactly.
And it's not.
It's not in reality, but in the echo chamber of what they're consuming, it is. And some of it is. So, I have kids in this age group. My daughter is 27, my son's 25. And, so I hear from them because they're very healthy, well-adjusted, to have great things they're doing in their lives, and they love everything they do every day. But all their friends, and they're online, because both my kids do online gaming. I do online gaming. I hear some of this myself when I do this stuff. And so there's a lot of fear in this generation, fear of not being able to afford a home, fear of the cost of living has skyrocketed. My son and I have long discussions about this compared to when I grew up. And I grew up with my parents. I'm first generation professional. My parents have never been to college. They're very low end blue collar. Yet, we always made things work. But this generation has a different kind of fear that wasn't present. I mean, so they're even saying that this is the first generation that doesn't have the same hope that we knew of, that we'll be better off than our parents. This generation doesn't feel that nearly the same. And also, a very scary stat came out. I saw last week that was posted. Generationally, each, whether it's the traditionalists, boomers, Xers, millennials, and the Ys, each generation declines, or I should say increases in the rationalization that there are some times when violence is warranted when you don't believe in what's going on. And I think it was 56% of the current young generation believes that at some point violence is okay when you don't believe in something or when something goes awry. And something like the Xers, like me, we're up at like 90% would think that's like bunk. But down here it's like 56% of that generation think at some point violence is rational. That's why we saw Luigi Mangione, in New York City. We saw it with the first Trump assassination attempt. We see it with the sad killing of the students at the church a couple of weeks ago in Minneapolis. This is a generation. Talk about the violence, the proclivity for it. Well, because a lot of them, by averages, think it's actually justified. And when you get an echo chamber of that groupthink online, where they're all saying certain things, and again, no one's going. I haven't experienced it. I do a lot of online stuff. No one is intentionally thinking we're radicalizing or thinking about it, but they're desensitizing each other towards these statements, these behaviors. I mean, so here's an example. We don't know all the details, but this guy was in Discord. I'm on Discord. I got my account in Discord, and when you're in group chat and thinking in here and you're pontificating, people are making funny jokes or whatever, and they, can be extremely inappropriate, can be extremely violent sometimes. And when no one's reacting or showing kind of, the vitriol against something you said, you're just like, oh, that must be justified, so we can keep going. I mean, so I think it's just.
And we didn't have that in the past either. We didn't have communities where you could, suddenly connect with a bunch of disenfranchised people and everybody can commiserate on, whatever you feel disenfranchised on. I mean, it could be anything. It's not just the, radical Islam or this or that anymore. Like, people can feel disenfranchised in almost anything. And then it gets to these echo chambers. I mean, those sort of things. I mean, what is the answer to that? Is it, do the platforms themselves bear more responsibility for allowing these things to fester on their platform in the name of free speech? I mean, is it free speech? I mean, there's just so many things. We're obviously a country. We don't like rights being taken away. We don't like, being told we can or can't say something. But in the same breath, our country is the first to say, you're completely wrong. You shouldn't be able to say that. And I should be able to say what I think, and the other side saying you shouldn't be able to say that.
So I got
the argument of free speech.
I thought about this so much, and I finally got a solution. But I don't know if anyone's going to do it, because here's what it takes. It takes some radical courage to do. Yeah, it's got to. So we can't things that don't work. We can't do. Because it's just a waste of time. Telling companies to stop doing X, Y, and Z, that never works. No control, that never works. Nothing ever works, right? And so you keep getting down to the root cause. That's why I really dug deep to figure out what was the root cause of this guy's motivation, potentially. And that, I think, curiosity died. So in a way to prevent curiosity from dying is you've got to instill or never crush it. In other words, you don't have to start doing something. It's easier just to stop. In other words, you don't have to start to try to reinvigorate curiosity. We're all imbued with it. Stop crushing it at a young age. And so if our leadership, both sides, all sides, here's the other thing. Tony and you and I were going back and forth this weekend. There's two terms I don't want to hear for another week. I don't want to hear Democrat. I don't want to hear Republican. I'm so sick of hearing those words. It's driving me up a wall. Yep. I want leadership in big corporations, in government, and everywhere. I want people at the top, because it all filters down. It comes from these inspirational people Just get curious. Stop poking fingers. Stop accusing. Stop saying someone's right or wrong, and just ask a question. So a lot of things Charlie Kirk stood for, a lot of people are against. But he had glimmers of doing some right things. Like I said the other day, Bill Maher will do the same. And people on both sides will do very similar things. They will ask the Socratic method. I mean, Socrates did this. It's called the Socratic method. We're talking thousands of years ago. This is not new technology here.
Yeah.
This is getting curious about understanding what someone thinks and how they came up with it. Because when you walk a mile in someone else's shoes and try to understand how they got to the point they are, your mind's going to be actually opened up. And here's a great example. So here I am. I'm about to go on the broadcast on Fox earlier today. And the person before me, I mean, I'm surrounded by, as you know, I'm surrounded by sticky notes. I got notes all over the place. Yeah. Because here's what happens. Someone says something before me that, wow, I had not heard that term before. And my initial reaction was, no, that's kind of a weird term. I don't like that term. But my initial reaction used to be that. But my action is I wrote it down. Mm-hmm. I got to research that. When I read a book that I haven't heard a term, or especially if I don't agree with something because of a prior experience, my first reaction from years ago would be, oh, that's not right. I'm right. My reaction now is I love those moments because I'm going to figure out what that means. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you, I had heard about Turning Point USA. I had never done a deep dive. I had heard of Charlie Kirk. I saw him all over TikTok. I never dove deep. What do you think I've been doing the last 3 days? What probably a lot of us been doing.
Yeah.
Everything associated with all these things, all these different optics, then reversing the context. Why are people saying this? Why does one side say this? Why? I mean, I have got all these different optics coming in so I can try to assess what's went sideways. And from all these different optics and angles, it really still boils down to our genetic biology of curiosity being vacant.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish more would look at it the way you are, the way I am, the way a lot of people. Some people are looking at it that way. Unfortunately, I feel like people are looking at it going, I hate, I agree, I disagree, and they're not looking at it from that bigger platform of why do they feel that way, and try to understand it. It's just I want this, and it's two thoughts, but. For the most part, I think people are capable of one.
Here's a great example, Tony. And I'm a vast reader. I probably read too much, although my wife, I think, reads even more. So I remember years and years ago when they started, when people started accusing people of being fascists and Nazis. And matter of fact, I consume a lot of information surrounding World War II. And you know how I got into that? Those terms. When people started accusing someone of being something, I didn't take it from the surface of what was being shoved down my throat. Mm-hmm. I did a deep dive. What's that actually mean? So I probably read 10 books on the Holocaust from survivors. I have read Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, which is a huge volume of book that takes place from Hitler's birth all the way up through the Nuremberg trials, written in the 60s. What else? I mean, then I've read, I Flew for the Fuhrer, which is the story of a Luftwaffe pilot for the Nazi Germany. That's a unique thing because the Luftwaffe pilots had no idea what the hell the Nazis were doing on the ground. They were just battling in the air. Then I read Reverse Context. I read Masters of the Air from the reverse angle from the 108th Air Force from the U.S., what it meant to fly during that. I mean, so what I'm hopefully exemplifying here and talking about is when someone says something, explore it.
Yeah.
Just do a deep dive. So that way it helps me understand your context when you say something. And then I can actually assess, all right, is it because they did a deep dive, a deep understanding? Is it a surface consumption of this? Again, without judgment, just so I kind of see where you're at, where I'm at. So we just take in all this information and data so you can really make better informed decisions on how to engage someone in a healthy way. That's it. Oh my gosh, how hard is it to just freaking consume it? Oh, it's another great example. I've read, there's 2 books on 2 great biographies on Elon Musk. I mean, this is years ago I got into Elon Musk, not for or against. This isn't about, this isn't like promoting or not promoting something. This is about understanding. So Ashley Vance is the one that wrote the one on Elon Musk. I think it was in 2014. Really good one because it wasn't sensationalized as much as one that came out by Walter Isaacson, who I actually love as an author. So that picked up on him. when JD Vance was tapped to be Trump's vice president. First thing I read was Hillbilly Elegy, long before he got into politics. That's a good book. I mean, and it's just, so this is what we should be doing, is just consuming information to get a deeper understanding of people. Boy, I can really go on. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, we end up consuming.
Apologizing.
We end up consuming just so much junk, and then our brains, like, for things that actually matter for decision making and getting along in a society with one another, it's like it's already been filled with this, and by the time we need to for that, I'm too tired. I'd rather look at that, and the algorithms are designed for that, and it's getting worse with AI just to feed us exactly what we want to see. And I will say this. I mean, this is a time where you said leadership. We need leadership. Yeah. We need the temperature tamped down. We're not in a good place where you have a leader saying, I don't give a damn about how this country heals. You should. It's your fucking job. You need to give a damn. We all need to give a damn.
We all do, yeah.
About how we feel about this. And it's not Democrat and it's not Republican. Everybody should give a damn about how we figure out how to go forward. I don't have to agree with anything you say, but all I ask is that you should give a damn. Everybody should give a damn for the sake of each other.
I just understand why you said it. You know, what caused you to say it. Again, it's just not about agreeing with someone, you know, a lot of times. It's just about understanding. People just want to be heard. They just want to be understood. They don't need to be agreed with. I mean, that's a benefit of it sometimes, but it's just want to be heard. Think about how many times I do this all the time. I always say you don't plant seeds with people by telling them what you think. You plant seeds with them by asking them what they think. And so I use this analogy all the time when I'm doing seminars. So you say you have someone that watches CNN, and you say you have someone that watches Fox News. Two diametrically opposed people that would probably never agree on anything, except that the sky is blue, maybe. And so say someone from Fox News says to me, here's what I think. And my immediate reaction is going to be, that's not what I think. Battle back. You know, I'm going to try to convince them that I'm right and you're wrong. I mean, just sit here, listen to this. How ludicrous does that sound? Do you think you're going to make do you think there's any argument you're going to make in your own brain that's going to inspire? Because remember, what's the goal here? Is the goal to change their mind, or is the goal to get them to think a little differently?
And that's what we need more of.
And here's what you do. It's really simple. Instead of saying, here's what I think, you say, wow, that's really something pretty interesting. I hadn't quite considered that before. How did you come up with that?
Yeah.
And then as they're sharing with you, their brain is now saying, wow, this person is listening to me. And then when you listen to them, it's not like you have to agree with them. Then you say, wow, that was really interesting what you said. I'm curious. What do you think about this idea? And now what you're doing is you're asking them their opinion about what it is you wanted to tell them in the first place. The likelihood they hear your words compared to before, 100%.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Just ask a thought or opinion.
Yeah.
You know, and what you're describing here, I think, could be used in any relationship. It's not just an adversary, but use it with your significant other, especially if you are not communicating, not having that connection. Step back a second and re-engage differently than what you did before.
We're all learning my interview strategies for recruiting sources, all based on this case. And so here's the glass half full Robin always has. I think this case, from the tragedy of loss of life, I do see a lot of there's potential for a change because it has gotten a lot of attention. I mean, I'm analyzing that because this is really kind of profoundly interesting that this one assassination attempt of a young man is having such a worldwide, profoundly huge impact, and it's created a dialogue. And what I'm hoping is that people are diving deeper on, like what we're doing here, is trying to understand what caused it and what could prevent it. Yeah. And it's not the ideology of either of these people that is the right answer. What is the proper answer is the fact that curiosity could have solved it. That's it. Just be curious, you know. Yeah. So if you believed in the ideology and the beliefs of Charlie Kirk or not, I think not all the time. There's many instances where he asked those questions and he modeled that way, and there's times when he didn't as well. Yeah. But there's a lot of people out there. If we're looking for positive confirmation bias in our own selves in the world around us, let us seek out those people that are having those moments of brilliance by asking those questions in that way, to being curious, because we're all doing something right. We're all doing something wrong. focus on those moments, model those behaviors when we're engaging other people, and you're going to start seeing things calm down. Because when you start arguing what you think is right, you can suspend your own ego, vanity, and sense of superiority. You'll be amazed at how well we can communicate.
I completely agree, and I think we'll leave it on that. Robin Dreeke, retired FBI special agent, former chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. As always, thank you so much for your insight on this. It is invaluable, especially right now. I think we'll wrap up the today's program on all of that. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Be sure to press subscribe wherever you are watching us or listening to us on any podcast platform or on YouTube or wherever it may be. We do greatly appreciate that. For Robin, for Todd, for Stacy, I am Tony Brueski. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.